This is the third Perek of Pirkei Avot, the last three Mishnayot Tet Zayin, Yud Zayin, and Yud Chet. The Mishnah Tet Zayin is really a continuation of the previous Mishnah, which is a continuation of the Mishnah before. This is the statements of Rabbi Akiva, the famous sage of the Tana, the famous sage of the Mishnah. And he told us before that God knows everything in the world. He judges us fairly, and that he gives us the choice how to act in our lives. So he continues with a parable that he wants to compare our lives in this world using a metaphor or a parable. So he says, Hu haya omer, he used to say, Rabbi Akiva used to say, Hakol natun be'eravon, u'mitzudeh prutzeh al kol ha'chaim. Everything in this world that's given to us is given with a guarantor, and the net hangs over all of our lives. So what does this mean? Hakol natun be'iravon, everything is given with a guarantor, meaning everything we're given in life, our lot in life, whether it's our wealth, our intelligence, our family, our friends, where we live, these things are given by God as a guarantor, meaning they're given to us on loan. And when someone passes away at the end of their life, God looks and takes back these things that he gave us and wants to see how we use them. If we use them appropriately, if we used our talents for good, if we're intelligent, did we learn Torah, did we teach others, did we act appropriately? If we're wealthy, did we use our money to give to charity, did we spend it unnecessarily? These are the things God's going to ask us. And then u'mitzudeh prutzeh kol ha'chaim, and a net is spread out over all of the living. Meaning a net that God controls our life like a fisherman has fish in a net, and that our lives are really in his hands. If he picks up the net, we can't live anymore. He can take away our lives. If we're in his net, he can take away some of our wealth. He can take away some of our talents. It's up to God. He can do whatever he wants. And then he continues with a very long mashal with a lot of parts, but each part tells us something new. So we'll read the whole thing in Hebrew, and then we'll go back and translate it in English and explain each part. Hachanut petucha, hachanvani makif, v'pinkas patuach, והיד כותבת וכל הרוצה ללוות יבוא וילווה, והגבאים מחזירים תדיר בכל יום, ונפרעים מן האדם מידתו ושלא מידתו, ויש להם על מה שיסמיכו, והדן דין אמת, וכל המתוקן לסעודה. So again, let's translate each part. החנות פתוחה, the store or the shop is open. So this whole analogy now that Rabbi Akiva is going to give, this whole metaphor, is based on the concept of a store. I mean, he's explaining this world is similar to a merchant store. Hachanu p'tucha, the store is open. Meaning, we can enter this store, we can benefit from its merchandise. The things in this world that were given to us by God to benefit from. But just realize, hachanvani makif, the merchant extends credit. And the merchant, the chenvani, is the store owner. He's going to makif, he's going to extend credit. He'll let you use these things. V'hapinkas patuach, and his ledger, where people are going to be borrowing from, is open. Meaning, he's open. V'hayad kotevet, and his hand is always writing down what's been taken from his store. V'hayad kotevet, v'kol harotzeh lelavot yavo v'yilveh. And anyone who wants to can come and borrow, and the store owner does not limit his wares or his products to certain people. So again, the mashal is, this world, the store is open, the owner of the store extends credit, lets people borrow, but his ledger is open, his hand is always writing and marking down what's been taken, and anyone who wants to can come and borrow. Then it continues, though, so this is the though part. V'agabayim machzirim tadir b'chol yom, but the gabayim, the collectors, are constantly making their rounds every day. V'nifraim min ha'adam midato v'shelo midato, and they're collecting from people, whether they know it or not. V'yesh lahem al ma she'esmichu, and the collectors have what to rely upon, meaning they're doing something correctly. Va'adan din emet, and they're going to judge truthfully, meaning they're not going to take money from you that's not unlawful or that's not just. V'kol metukan l'suda, and everyone is ready for the suda, meaning what's happening is the just to continue and explain the analogy. So the store owner lets people borrow, whether anytime they want. He extends credit to whoever needs to take things from his store, but he's always making sure to write down in his book who takes what and how much they owe. But he's very open to lending to people, but his collectors are going to come. He says, you can borrow this, but my collectors can come any day, anytime they want, whether you know it or not, and they're going to be coming, making their rounds, trying to collect from you. And there's collectors, they have proof of how much you owe, and they have the books, they have everything written down, and they're going to be just in their collecting, but don't worry, at the end of the day, everything is going to be prepared for a banquet. So that's the mashal. What's the nimshal? So the nimshal is pretty simple when you get through the whole thing. So the nimshal is the store is open, meaning this world is open for us to benefit from. God allows us to use the bounty of this world, whether it's the nature, whether it's wealth, whether it's our intelligence, and we're allowed to use it. And He loves the fact that we are using it. If He's constantly extending credit and allowing us to use and benefit from this world and our talents. But you should realize that when He's giving us these things, He's giving us intelligence, He's always writing down what He's giving us and what we do with it. He's always making sure to write it down, but He says, anyone who wants to can use these things for whatever they want, which is again the concept of bechira chafshit that we mentioned earlier. But hagabayim machzirim tadir b'chol yom. This is the but you should realize that when He lends you this money, He's not just lending it to you for nothing, and He's lending it to you that people are going to collect it. He's going to say, what did you do with the intelligence I gave you? What did you do with the wealth I gave you? And He's always going to be looking, and whether you know it or not is an important part. One day, when you're not expecting it, when you're least expecting it, He'll say, I want to know, what did you do with the intelligence? What did you do with the wealth? And then, if He says, I'm taking it back, I'm taking back your wealth, I'm taking back your intelligence, I give you life, you didn't live a life correctly, and I could take it back. And He has something to prove what He did, and He's dan din emet. He's going to judge fairly and truthfully in His judgment, because He has proof. He has everything written in His ledger. But the last line is, it's the line that doesn't fits the least into the mashal, but makes sense in context, is, and He's preparing a banquet for us. So what's this banquet? The banquet is the world to come, that God is going to say, I've given you so much, and look what you've done with it. You've done this. I'm preparing for you a place in the world to come, because you've done correctly. You've done good by me. You've paid back your loans that you've lent, and I'm preparing this lavish meal at the end of your life, this banquet, to pay you back with. So that's Rabbi Akiva's mashal. I guess it's his way of understanding the world, of making it easy for us to understand how God operates and why we're allowed to benefit from the world. Yet still, he says, you never know when God's going to demand to get His money back. Okay, the next Mishnah is a famous one. It's kind of long, but it's not complicated. So this is Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah is famous. He took over as the Nasi. He's famous in the Haggadah for Harei Ani Kishivim Shana. It's as if I'm 70 years old, when he was only 18. So he was a famous sage in the Mishnah also. So what he's going to do is give 4 pairs of concepts where one can't exist without the other. And the pair not only complement, but actually complete each other. So he's going to give 4 pairs where you can't have one without the other. So he says here, Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Im ein Torah, ein derech eretz, im ein derech eretz, ein Torah. He says, without Torah, one doesn't have good manners. And without good manners, one can't have Torah. So once again, derech eretz, again, we talked about earlier in the second parak. So this would be a good question for a test. What are the 2 times the words derech eretz appears? So here it appears it means Torah, it means derech eretz, and most commentators say it means good manners, but some say it means occupation. While in the earlier Mishnah it was the other way around. Most commentators said it meant occupation. So it means Torah, ein derech eretz. If one doesn't have Torah study, they can't have. We'll start with good manners, and if a person doesn't have good manners, he can't have Torah study. So without the Torah, one can't learn necessarily the morals that God wants from us. Meaning, you can have people who are good people and trustworthy and decent people and moral people and good behaviors, but you should realize that if you don't have this good behavior without the Torah, even if you have this good behavior without the Torah, you can never have the what God wants from you, because there are certain things that Torah tells us about what we want, about what God wants from us in terms of what's the correct acts. Like there's a mitzvah in the Torah that if your friend's animal is under a burden and it's going to fall, you have to pick it up. So you can be a really great person, but you would never know that that's what God wants from us. Or there's a mitzvah in the Torah that if you see something on the floor, you have to pick it up. So if you didn't have the Torah, you wouldn't know that's considered a derech eretz. That's the correct way to act. But then the Mishnah gives the flip side. Im ein derech eretz ein Torah. That if you don't have good midos, you can't be a true Torah scholar. That Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is telling us that success in Torah, true success in Torah, requires derech eretz, meaning good, kind values. You can't be a mean person and be a Torah scholar. Another way of looking at this is the occupation, which makes sense also. If you don't have Torah study, there's no point of having an occupation, and if you don't have an occupation, you can't study Torah with a good head, with clear clarity, because you're always worried about where your next dollar is going to come. So then the Mishnah continues. These are a little more difficult. Im ein chachma ein yira, im ein yira ein chachma. If someone doesn't have wisdom, they can never truly fear God, because the way to fear God is to contemplate Him, and if you don't think about what is God and how God exists, you can't truly fear Him. And yet, if you don't fear God, if you don't have awe or majesty for the person, you can never have complete knowledge, because knowledge depends on understanding the human, hugeness and vastness of the world, and that requires some elements of awe. Im ein bina ein dat, im ein dat ein bina. If one doesn't have understanding, bina means understanding, no knowledge, or you can't have knowledge or wisdom. So again, bina is understanding and dot is wisdom, meaning dot, knowledge, is the reasoning for facts, the why, and bina is being able to extrapolate from these facts, from these whys, to bigger picture things. So the Mishna is telling us, if you don't have bina, if you don't have knowledge, if you can't be able to derive why something is, you can never extrapolate information, and if you can't extrapolate information, there's no point to understanding the why. This is a famous line, Im ein kemach ein Torah, im ein Torah ein kemach. If you don't have literally flour, if you don't have sustenance, you can't study Torah. And if you don't have Torah study, there's no point to all the flour you have. So that's what he's saying. Again, Im ein kemach ein Torah. If you don't have flour, if you don't have sustenance, there's no point in learning Torah. Im ein Torah ein kemach. If there's no Torah, there's no point to your occupation. Then he continues, and he used to say a line. Hu haya omer. He used to say, Kol shechachmato meruba mima'aseh lemahu domeh. Someone whose knowledge is more than their actions, meaning they study a lot of Torah, but they don't do mitzvot correctly. They don't have the mitzvot to support their Torah. Lemahu domeh. To what can he be compared? He can be compared le'ilan she'anafav murubav v'shorashav mu'atin. He can be compared to a tree who has a lot of branches but has very few roots, meaning it's top heavy. The top is very big, but the bottom has no strong foundation. So what happens to a tree like this? Ruach ba v'okrato v'hachvato al panav. A wind comes, v'okrato, it can knock it over, v'hofachtu, and will flip it on its head. Meaning, so what is this comparison? The Torah study is like your branches, and the maasim, your actions, like the roots. So if you don't have the Torah study, if the Torah study is not supported by an action, it'll just fall on its face, and all the Torah will almost be lost. It'll fall away. Shenemar. This is a pasuk, quoting a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, Perek Zayin, V'haya ki arer ba'arava v'lo yireh, ki yavo tov v'shachein charirim b'midbar, eretz melecha v'lo teishav. English translation, he will be like a lone tree in the desert, and you will not see when goodness comes. It dwells in parched lands in the wilderness, in a salty, uninhabited land. Meaning, The first pasuk is explaining, he's going to quote another one later, that just as a tree gets uprooted because God uproots it, it's not in an ideal place, it's in a salty desert, it's in a parched land, so too this individual who doesn't have the correct proportions of actions. His Torah study is significantly more than his Maaseh. We know that Torah study is supposed to lead to Maaseh because of the fact it's not equatable, or they're not in the correct proportions. Just as God made the trees unfruitful and puts them when they're in the wrong location, so too they compare this person also to a tree that will become die out. And then he continues with this mashal, and he says, "Aval kol shemasav merubim michachmato," but someone who is more of a man of action than study, meaning in proportions of he's doing mitzvah constantly and studying, but his mitzvah performance almost outweighs his Torah knowledge. Lemahu domer, to what is he compared? Le'ilan sh'anafav muatim v'shorashav merubim, to a tree that doesn't have so many branches but has many deep roots, or a lot of roots, but that's my my elaboration is many roots that go deep also. Sha'afilu kol haruchot sheba'olam bot v'noshvot bo ein meizizin oto mokom, that even if all the winds in the world come and blow against it, they won't budge this tree from its place. Meaning, a person who's rooted into action, a man of action, doing mitzvah constantly, he will never be blown away from certain action, from because of winds, whether it's the winds of change, whether it's different types of winds. These won't affect him, and he'll always be able to stay in his place, rooted with mitzvot and Torah. Shene'emar, as the Torah says, "Vayaka eitz ashatul al mayim v'al yivul yishlach shorashav v'lo yireh ki yavo chom v'haya alehu ra'anan u'bishnat batzoret lo yidag v'lo yamish me'asot peri." He will be like a tree planted near water, which spreads its roots along a brook and does not see when the heat comes. I mean, it sees when the heat comes, but the heat doesn't affect it. Whose foliage is ever fresh. This type of tree is always growing roots because it's near a river. And it will not worry in a year of drought, and it will not start producing fruit. This type of tree, it's promised by God because of the fact it's placed in a fruitful location. It will never dry out, and that's what he's saying. A person whose Torah study comes almost in conjunction or in coordination with his doing mitzvot, this is the individual who never ceases to exist. He never ceases to produce fruit. Fruit symbolically, maybe it's Jewish children, his destiny continues to remain Jewish, and nothing changes him. Okay, the last Mishnah is an interesting one. Rabbi Elazar ben Chisma Omer. Rabbi Elazar, the son of Chisma, said, "Kinin upitchei nida hein gufei halachot." So kinin is a type of a korban. It's one of the books of Mishnayot in Kadshim. It's all the way at the end of Shas, Mishnayot. So kinimar is a book of korbanot that deals specifically with birds. Like Kan Sipor is a pasuk in the Torah. It's a type of bird. So kinim is all about birds, and these are very difficult halachot. And then he says, and Pirkei Nido. So Pirkei Nida is the beginning period of when a woman is forbidden to be with her husband, the beginning of her menstruation time. So these are two areas of halacha that are extremely difficult. Some commentaries say it's not only that it's difficult, it's also that it's a little, some people might think it's below them to study about little birds or to study about women's, menstruation is not something that a Talmud Chacham should be studying. Yet Rabbi Elazar ben Chisma says, Hein gufei halachot. Both of these areas are gufei halachot, are essential. I think the Art Scroll translates that essential laws are simply actual laws. They're a part of the Torah Sheba'al Peh and can't be dismissed, either because don't say they're too hard or don't say the fact that they're below you. But then he says, Tekufot the gematriot parpaot lechachmon. But tekufot, which is calculating the calendar, and gematria is numerology, meaning that each letter has a certain numerical value, and trying to figure out the importance of the word based on its numerical value, are parparot,
lechachma. So parparot are literally desserts, and chachma is wisdom. So what's the Mishnah saying? The kufot and gematrot are parparot lechachma. It's saying these studies, which almost seem lofty or mystical, should never be considered the main course. They're only a dessert. So what does it mean they're only a dessert? They're an addition. They're not the main part of the study of laws, and while they're not exciting or really interesting sometimes, this is what the Rabbi Elazar ben Chisma is saying. These are only extra things and should only be studied after someone has learned all the gufei halachot Torah Sheba'al Peh. This concludes the third parak of Mishna Pirkei Avot and your summer learning for 2012.